name is Steve Polatsek. I'm 84 years old. I was born in 1938 in Kunhegyes, which is in the middle of Hungary, in a small village. My father is Paul Polatsek. My mother is Rose Friedman. And my mother and father born in Kunhegyes. And my father was also a painter, house painter. We only had 4 wells, artesian wells in a village, because everybody had a well, but you couldn't drink that water. It was not deep enough for drinking. So we used to go to the well and bring home the water for drinking. I lived in a house, had no plumbing, only had a stove for cooking and heating.
How many generations of your family lived in this village?
Well,
You said your grandparents.
yeah.
That grandparents on your
Yes.
mother's side and your father's side, both?
Well, my mother's side, I think they came from Romania, the Friedmans. My father's side, I think as far as we could go back, was always, they lived in Hungary. They lived in, mostly in Kunhegyes.
Do you remember what it was like when World War II began? I know that the Germans didn't occupy Hungary at that point.
They didn't occupy Hungary because they were allies. Well, the war was going on. Like you said, in Hungary, they came in only 1944.
Right. But
So
before that-
things were, and we heard stories that what's happening, the Polish Jews, they were killing them, or, you know, something like that, but was nothing real that we would know that it could happen to us. And see, but what they did is that they called in the men to the army.
Was your
Put him-
father?
My father was in the Hungarian army, and then they took away they had guns like a soldier. They took it away, they gave them a shovel. They became a labor force. They were just working in front of the Germans, preparing the roads, or
Is this everyone in the Hungarian army, or is it just the Jews?
not everybody was.
So all the Hung-
And what happened is only the women, old men, and children stayed in the village. They make us wear the yellow star, and then they got us together. They locked up the houses, got in the middle of the street. They walked us out to the gypsy quarters. The gypsies lived in outside of the village. By the time they took the gypsies, I believe they killed them all. They put us in there. That was a ghetto. And then from there, they took us to a city, Szolnok. There was a sugar factory there. And they put us in there.
When did your father leave to go into the military?
Well, I was 2 years old. I never remember my father. I had a sister, Eva.
And she's...
She is 1 year older than I am.
So just the two of you? Your parents and the two children?
Well, there is a little side story to this. My father happened to get very friendly with one of the peasant girls. Her name was Elizabeth Csőregi, and she got pregnant. She had to leave the village because those days you can't have a child without a father. So she left and went to another village. And then my mother and father got married. That was in 1935.
This relationship with this girl, peasant girl, was before your parents got married. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
So then she came back to her parents, and this boy was growing up with the grandparents of hers, you know. Got married, my mother and father got married, and had my sister Eva. She's was born 1937, and then she had me.
So 1944, I don't know, what is the date, do you know, when Germans occupied Hungary?
I think it was in June. And I remember that. And then they took us out in the middle of the street, wearing the yellow star, and they took us and marched us out. We just had to walk out. And some village people were on the side, some would be cursing us, what time that you guys leaving, and and some were, my mother had non-Jewish friends, and they were sad that, this is what's happening. And like I said, they took us to the outside of the village. So they from there they took us to this bigger city.
So when you got there, what were you supposed to do then?
Well, we got there, went to the gate. There were dead people on either side of the gate. They shot these people, probably for a reason to say that nobody should escape. We already were in there. And when we got there, they started interrogating the women. They took them into these rooms and they beat them. So we were in this place maybe for, 3-4 days.
Was your mother interrogated?
No. My mother was next in interrogation. And my mother was so scared that these people were going to beat her, that they had a transport. And they called our name to get on the transport. And her sister says, no, don't go, we wait till the next one. And my mother says, no, we have to get on here because this guy wanted to interrogate her and there was no more room to be there. He said, I'll get you tomorrow.
On the transport?
We get on these cattle cars. They put us up there.
Okay.
There was only room to standing. Mm-hmm. They had one pail for people to use for if they have to go to the bathroom. And we were standing, kids, old people, they locked the door and they took us. I don't know how many days we were there, but like I said, some people died in the thing there, and we had no place to go. I mean, it was locked up. So they opened.
There was no water for you.
No water.
Any place to.
Nothing.
Air. Were there windows?
No, it was a cattle car. Mm-hmm. It was, was nothing there.
Mother, you and Ava, is that right?
Her sister, actually almost the whole Polatsek family. My grandfather, my grandmother, so we were all together. My cousins were there. It was they called the names, like Polatseks. So we all get on the train. Train stopped. They took us off the thing.
Where were you?
Hurry up. We were in Austria.
Okay.
They took us into this place where they disinfected people. Mm-hmm. Because we were going to this place where there was a factory. They making canned foods for the German army. So that's where my mother gonna be working. So they disinfected us. And my mother won't they had the men go separately and the women. My mother kept me because she was afraid she gonna lose me. So she took me and she always turned me around so that nobody could see that I was a boy, So in there I saw women, black and blue, the ones who got beaten. I mean, so many of them were
they made to undress?
Well, we were all naked.
All naked.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they got us into this room, a shower room, and when the water came on, they were screaming. Everybody was screaming. They thought maybe gas coming, not the water. But the water came, we cleaned ourselves, and then they took us into this place in Vienna.
Right.
So there were barracks there.
Okay.
It's like it was a concentration camp, but not a death camp.
Mm-hmm. The work camp.
A labor camp. Mm-hmm. So my mother went into the factory working. They were packing, like I said, canned goods for the German army. And we were just playing around on a garbage dump. We found something to eat, whatever.
They didn't feed you?
No, they gave food, but they give you very small amount of bread.
And how long were you there?
Till the Russian army came.
So we were talking about a year.
A year. 1 year.
During that year, did any of your family members die? You know, pass away
No.
because of the...
No. One time the SS came, they lined up all the kids. They said, tell the kids, they don't do nothing here, they're gonna take us away. And the man who owned the factory talked to the SS and says, no, you must keep the children here. So that was this. He saved us won't take us
The
away.
owner of the factory.
Yeah. But what happened is that before we get on the train, the rest of the train went to Auschwitz.
So your family got out of this...
If we didn't get on this transport, we would have been in Auschwitz.
Did you have the option to get on this train?
Well, we could have not show up. You know, they called your name that...
You don't show up, you stayed...
Then they take somebody else.
You would have stayed there and then you would have been shipped to
Auschwitz.
Auschwitz.
The chapter of the Holocaust in Hungary is very significant for understanding the final solution, especially because the heart of it occurs in 1944 and in the last year of the war, we can say. So before 1944, the Hungarians had engaged in persecution of the Jews of Hungary, and that also included deportation of about 18,000 Jews to a place called Kamenets-Podolsk in the late summer of 1941, in which most of them were murdered then by the Einsatzgruppen. They also had set up forced labor units, and many men were sent to the Eastern Front, Jewish men as forced laborers, some 45,000, and about 80% of them never came home. Most of this before what happens in 1944. But when the Germans will enter with a very small amount of men who are supposed to be putting together the deportation under Adolf Eichmann, maybe 150, 200 men, the deportations are carried out by the Hungarians, by the Gendarmerie, under the Interior Ministry, by the local prefects and the local mayors. These are all the people involved in concentrating the Jews and then deporting them to Auschwitz. They come in on March 19th. By the middle of April, they begin setting up ghettos in the provinces and have put in all of the anti-Jewish laws they've done everywhere else in a much shorter time. Here it's very intense. They send out 2 deportations at the end of April, but by May 15th, organized systematic deportations from Hungary are beginning, and almost all the Jews of Hungary that are being deported, some 437,000 of them out of about 800,000 in all of Hungary's territories, are deported, and most of them to Auschwitz. And in Auschwitz, between 80 and 85% of the Jews who arrived from Hungary in Auschwitz are murdered upon arrival. So the deportations in Hungary are carried out under German auspices, but by the Hungarians. And that's a very important part to understand. So again, Hungary is a complex story about 1944. And again, it raises many questions we want to ask ourselves about the world's response, about how Jews understood things, about why local people will become so involved in the deportations even this late into the war. And then lastly, why are the Nazi Germans pushing this so hard so late into the war? And I think it tells us a lot about their priorities in terms of carrying out the final solution, even as the war is certainly very much not in their favor at this point.
So the war ends, and what do you remember about the Russians came to the factory? How did you know the war ended?
Well, what happened is, you see, the Germans, when they were, the Russians were pushing the Germans out, you know, they would have a unit come and blow up everything. They blew up factories, they blew up the bridges, they tried to make everything hard for the Russian army to advance. So they were coming so fast that they didn't have time to blow up the factory. So then the Russians came and opened the gate and he says, get out.
The Russians said, get out of the bunker.
Go.
Go, leave. So now
we started walking back to Budapest.
And this is a couple, how far would you say to Budapest?
Yes.
Okay, so how far?
It's like 200 kilometers. Like it took us, I figured out it took us 2 weeks to get back
You're walking.
from Vienna. Walking from Vienna, we went to Vienna, to Prague, which is Czechoslovakia, and from there to Budapest.
All walking.
All walking, climbing over bridges which were blown up. And
And you're talking thousands of people doing this?
well, no, we were just one group together. The family stayed
But
together.
on the roads, there were...
For everybody, the Russians were coming this way. We had to walk in the gutters. A few times the Germans came with a aeroplane and machine gun the road, and the Russians. We were in the ditches. Russians were on the other side, and so, the Russian army was going towards Berlin, and we were going back against them.
Now, what happened to your father during the...
And the Russian overrun the Germans, overrun my father's unit,
Right.
the labor thing. They took him prisoner with the Germans. They put him in a prison camp in Russia. See, what happened is the war was over in 1945. My father didn't come home till 1948. And then we get on the train, we went back to Kunhegyes.
So when you got back to the village, was your home still there?
The home was there, was all emptied out.
Empty?
They took the sewing machine or, whatever beds, they took everything out. So when we went back, my grandparents trying to put back their houses. My mother's sisters would like to bring, they went to the neighbors. They said, this is mine, would you give it back to me? And this, and, trying to put everything together.
And did neighbors do that? Did they give back?
Some were said, we wish you didn't come back. By that time, this my father's son, he was in the same school too. But we really didn't know too much.
How old how much?
He's 3 years older than I am.
Okay.
When I was 6, he was about
What
9.
happened to him during the war?
He stayed with the grandparents.
The 500,000, there were 6 million that were murdered. But the 500,000 you're referring to are who?
I read this someplace that's how many Hungarian Jews got killed. See, by the time the Germans got to Hungary in 1944, they knew exactly what to do. The trains were rolling into Auschwitz, and it was just a production. It just killing people. And even though it was late when they get to Hungarians, it was there.
So after the war in Hungary, Hungary was now ruled by the Russians.
Russian communists.
So the country was a communist country. So how was that different than or before?
Well, you see, people in America don't understand what socialism is. It means the government owns everything. The government owns the bank, government owns the housing, the government owns the factories, everything owned by the government. See, my mother was smart. My mother didn't want to stay in Kunhegyes because she knows if my father comes home to Kunhegyes, he will never leave. So by the time while we were in an orphanage, my mother went to Budapest.
Did she have a job? Your mother? Did she have a job?
No. There's a Jewish organization, they call it the Joint. They would give her food to live on.
In Budapest?
In Budapest, see before. But see, before she went down to Kunhegyes and asked the grandfather of this boy
Okay.
if she would take him.
So she offered to take your
My mother asked-
father's illegitimate son. And why would she do that?
So my mother promised if we all come back, she'll go and get this boy. And she did. And she did. So he was 13 years old. She took him up to Budapest, to the apartment. My father came back from Russia. And then she came down to this orphanage and took me and my sister. to Budapest, into this apartment to live. And there was Charlie.
Charlie.
And we never questioned it.
Who Charlie was or how?
I know we knew who he
Why?
was.
Why?
We know how it was, we know everything, but we would never say, well, what is this kid doing here, you know?
Yeah.
It was such a natural thing, and from there on we just went to school in Budapest, and my father started working as a house painter, much more jobs in Budapest, a lot of apartments. He would paint apartments. And only thing the communists did something good is that they made sure everybody learns a trade. And my brother was into this school to be a tool and die maker. So I was going to a technical school. And then a year before the revolution, I went to work for my father as a painter. But meanwhile, while we were in Budapest as a young kid, we used to line up for bread. There was bread shortage. Line up for milk. Line up for sugar. This was a communist system. You know, it was because what happened is they took the farm away from the peasants. And they made like a kibbutz, you know, like a collective farm. And when you work, nobody worked that hard. You work for yourself, you produce. These farms were not producing enough food. So we had to, you know, line up all the time. So then came the revolution, 1956.
Okay.
So again, the Russians shooting, bombing, whatever. They said they're going to leave Hungary to become independent.
Tanks came into Budapest? The tanks came into Budapest?
They were in there. Then they started fighting and they left. They said, okay, we're leaving. And then happened, same time happened the Suez Canal. So America felt much better to look after the Suez Canal than Hungary. So the Russians see that nothing's happening. They came back, bombed the city. Everything was all messed up. So Charlie and I, we got on the train and started going west to the border. So it was an iron curtain. You could never get out of this country. You could never go close to the border. They would arrest you, and you could not get out. That's what the iron curtain was. But this time it was all chaos. Nobody could control it. So we got on the train, and the train stopped before get to the station, and they said, whoever wants to escape, get off here, because the Russians are at the station taking people off, because you had no reason to be at the border station. So we got off the train. We went to the farmer's house, and we asked him that we could stay till dark. He said, yeah. So there was another couple there already.
You're with, who are you with? With
My brother, Charlie and I.
Okay.
And then when it got dark, we started walking the fields towards Austria. We could see a little glow on a horizon. We knew that was the village in Austria. So we walked a few times, they shut up, these flares became lighter than daylight. And they started shooting. They knew people were out there. So the Russians were shooting to...
Without even, they couldn't see anybody, they just...
No, this light went on.
Flares. Okay.
The flare went on, it was like we threw ourselves down there. But I think they were afraid to go out there because a lot of people had guns, whoever escaping. So they just raked the field, you know, just to do it. We were walking, and all of a sudden there was a rise, and then there's a fence. So we're looking for a break in the fence. There was somebody even there before. So we fell onto the other side of the fence. So we ran across the border and ended up in Austria.
So this was
56.
1956.
I'm Walter Cronkite. The film you are about to see provides a story in itself. Some of it has recently been smuggled out of Hungary. Much of it has not been seen in this country before. This is how it all started. In Hungary's capital, university students hold a demonstration in support of Poland. The crowd that acclaims Poland's independent spirit numbers tens of thousands. Now its interest quickly shifts to other problems, Hungary's problems. They demand an end to Soviet domination, national independence. Then they start marching to the Budapest radio station to make known their demands to the nation and to the world. Angry, the crowd refuses to disperse until student leaders are freed. Defied, the AVO, the security police, acts. As the news spreads, the people of Hungary rally and fight back, enraged by the use of Soviet force. Hungarian army units are sent to suppress the revolt. They go over to the side of the people. Soviet losses in this attack are heavy. Some Soviet troops defect, others fraternize. The Red Army begins to withdraw to regroup. In Budapest and in provincial centers, AVO files are destroyed. Falsified records of forced confessions are burned. Soviet propaganda is added to the bonfires. Life in Budapest is slowly returning to normal. Food begins to trickle in from the country. In the fraternal mood of the moment, the farmers simply hand it out to those who are hungry. Budapest is racked with rumors. Each newcomer from the West meets the same anxious questions. Are the Russians coming back? If so, will the UN take action? On November 3rd, Defense Minister Paul Maliter and Minister of State Zoltán Tildy announced good news. An agreement seems to be near that Soviet troops will not return to Budapest. Maliter is arrested. Later that night, the Soviets strike. Much of Hungary, like Budapest, is in ruins. The people who rose in anger and toppled a totalitarian regime are beaten. Once more, the shadow of Soviet terror falls heavily on the land and its people, the victims of the revolt in Hungary.
This is battered Budapest under the brutal Russian boot. Soviet tanks roam the streets amid the ruins they made, as communist secret police hunt down heroic freedom fighters. Here for all the world to see is grim evidence of the brutality and savagery with which the red tanks blasted a defenseless people and their city. 2 Budapest cameramen risked execution to make these pictures and smuggle them out of Hungary. 25,000 Hungarians are dead. Budapest is ravaged, but the communist masters cannot crush a proud people. Defiantly, they chant, "We shall be free." Refusing to live under Soviet tyranny, refugees stream into Austria. They flee with little more than the clothes on their backs. The Russians have blockaded highways and destroyed bridges in a desperate effort to halt the mass exodus. But in 6 weeks, 120,000 Hungarians slip out of their troubled homeland. By cover of night, other Hungarians make their escape on a tree trunk spanning a 14-foot border canal, an endless flow of displaced and homeless, fleeing the black night of Soviet terror. 1,300 refugees find asylum in Holland, one of 16 countries offering new homes to the latest victims of communist inhumanity. Daily in Vienna, trains wait to take the children of Soviet oppression to a new home and a new life. At the American Embassy in Vienna, crowds wait in the streets for admission to the United States. President Eisenhower offers asylum to 21,000. The first plane load arrives at McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey. Stepping out into the crisp air of America, the refugees have found the freedom for which their countrymen yearned and fought and died. By January 1st, all 21,000 refugees will have reached the United States. Under the stars and stripes, these Hungarians can work and wait and hope for the day when Hungary will be free.
But by the time we ended up going to Austria, we went to camp, signed up again always. We could have gone any place. We could have gone to Australia.
These were DP camps?
Yes.
Is that what this is? Who ran these camps?
As soon as we crossed the border, the religion came up. They say, what are you, Catholic, Protestant? Because they are the ones who would set up to, how you call it. So when we were in line, they say, well, I said, I'm Jewish. My brother Charlie behind me said, well, what are you? I said, I'm Protestant. He said, oh, what the hell happened here? How come you? So we ended up, at the end, we ended up in Germany in an army camp. And they flew us over to New Jersey.
Oh.
They opened up a Camp Kilmer in New Jersey, was a closed-up camp, army camp. They opened it up for the refugees.
Refugees escaping from
Whoever escaped.
Communist Hungary. And that was what year was that?
1957.
So you're in 1957, you're now in the United States.
I'm here.
And you were in a camp, and
Only way you could get out of the camp if somebody come and sponsor you. So he came out and he took out 10 young men who had nobody. He sponsored them through the church.
Okay.
But not me. He says to me, he said to Charlie and I, he says, listen, I take Charlie out, but I'm gonna go back. I have friends in Hayes, Hebrew International, whatever it is. He said that he'll talk to them and they will bring me out. So Charlie went out, and a week later, he arranged that I had a soldier took me into Grand Central Station. The train is going, and I'm looking, I want to Bridgeport. I was lucky enough to find, get off at Bridgeport. And I got off Bridgeport, and there were two people from this Hayes was waiting for, one was spoke Hungarian, so I could, so they put me up with a Jewish family. And somebody said that there's a Hungarian man who owns a carpet store. If I wanna, I said anything, I would have been anything. So he hired me. I got so friendly with him that I became a carpet layer too. I could work my own, and then at the end we got together and we opened up a carpet store.
Oh.
Me and this Americano. And then came 1962, the Cuban crisis, about the missiles in Cuba, and Kennedy needed manpower because they were against the Russians. So I went into the army. They called me into the army. I got drafted. So they gave me training in New Jersey and gave me schooling, and then sent me out over to Germany.
Sent you to Germany?
Germany. So now I'm in Germany. Now I'm in uniform. I'm the
in charge.
I'm in charge, you know.
Germans.
Against the Germans. So I ended up in this army unit driving a tank. So we used to go on maneuvers, and we were rumbling through these villages, German villages, and shaking the houses. Then they sent us down to the border with Czechoslovakia.
That's communist. That's communist.
That's where the Russians were, you know.
Right.
East Germany, West Germany, they were all still apart. So, I tell you, it was a good experience being in the army.
How long were you in the army? 2
years.
Your mother was...
In Bridgeport with my brother, Charlie.
They came to... She was able to leave permanently?
No, just to visit.
Okay, to visit, okay.
And she went to this supermarket. That was a big time, first time. So they had the carts, when it begins. Because you used to have little grocery stores This was a big supermarket. And while she's shopping there, she heard Hungarian, and she went over there to this lady who was working there, and it was a Hungarian lady, and she got friendly with her. And this lady says, that is your son Steve, is he seeing anybody? And she said no. She says, here's a phone number. This young lady came out from Hungary, same storage. They let her come to her sister who lived in Westport. So she gave me this phone number to call this young lady. So I did call the number. I've been out on a date, went to the movie.
What'd you say? What was the movie?
What was the movie?
I didn't understand the word.
I know the movie, but she spoke a little English, but she was keep asking me what they saying, what they saying. And anyhow, so
Did you go, shh, I'm listening to the movie?
no, I was nice. So
Well,
this
that was the time you were nice.
I was nice.
She said there was one time you
One
were
time.
nice.
So my mother is waiting home for me. Says, son, how was the girl? How was the girl? I said, oh, this Elizabeth is crazy. This girl never had a date. She's got a big neck. She's got big knees. I said, this girl is off, just terrible.
But you were lying about this?
I was lying. Well, here she is. But anyhow, what happened is that the next day I come home, I'm taking a shower, and my mother said, where are you going? I said, well, I feel so bad for this girl, never had a date. I'm going to take her out one more time. My mother thought I was, what a nice guy I am. So the third night I took her home.
To your mom. Your mom like her?
I think so. Spoke Hungarian.
When you think of yourself as a part of this world, do you think of yourself as a Hungarian, an American? What are your?
What happened here is I'm here in Glen Eagles playing tennis with you. I'm the biggest Hungarian you ever seen. Because they ask you, you're a Hungarian. I was never a Hungarian. Like I said, they would never allow you to be a Hungarian. A German couple come to Hungary and have a son. He became a Hungarian, but never a Jew. Never a Jewish person would allow you to be a Hungarian. Here I am, I feel I'm American. I mean, I served in the army, was great. We got together, right there when we were in Germany with all the people, all Americans are, so we were against somebody, we were united, we were together, we were Americans. That I really feel lucky to be alive and to play tennis with you.
Where are you now?
In the concentration camp, concentration camp, playing on a garbage dump. My sister and I, and some of the cousins, and I found a carrot. And I put it in my pants, but my pants were so short, it stuck out. So the Gestapo, German Gestapo came, and he said, you stole that carrot. He wanted to arrest me. I mean, I was only a little kid.
5 years old.
Yeah, 6 years old. And so, if he let me go, but my sister and I always laugh about that the carrot was sticking out from my pants. But, but there is a lot of little detours in life.